that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 426th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. That is Tom Fennell, who said he's in the flesh. I don't know where I am. I'm not sure whether I'm in the flesh or not. What do you think of that, Tom? Maybe I'm an ethereal being. Okay. Every day I get up and I record. I put together a list of news items that relate to energy and climate change. Each has a synopsis of about 50 to 55 words and a link to the original article. And I put these together and put 15 of them, usually, sometimes fewer, but not many fewer, into a blog post. I put posts up every day. And by the way, tomorrow I will have linked pretty reliably over 44,000 articles.
You're keeping busy, huh?
I'm keeping busy, yeah. Once a week, Tom and I kind of get together, although of late it has been from our homes via the internet because of COVID-19. And we talk about the ones that we think are the most important of these. We're starting this show with the articles that came up on the 1st of July, today being the 8th. So we're going to do the 1st through 7th of July. And you can find the material that Tom and I used to put the show together on a link, which will be attached to this video, or you can get a download of that file, poke around, and you'll probably find it. And I will tell you, try to keep telling you apprised of the date of the article that we're talking about, so you can go, if you wish, to geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, to read the articles. And you always have something to say at this point, Tom.
I usually do. So you want to know what the name of the article is?
What's that?
You want to know what the name of the article is?
Well, you usually say some of these are well worth reading, but
I usually do. We got a nice picture here of Mount Jefferson in Oregon.
That is right, and I'm going to put it up if I can just figure out how to get this computer to comply with my wishes. There it is. And this is an article from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title?
U.S. West Coast, carbon-free by 2045 or earlier.
Yep.
That's good news.
It is. HB 2021, Oregon's, quote, 100% clean electricity, end quote, bill, which the legislature just approved and sent to Governor Brown for signing, puts Oregon on a path to zero greenhouse gas emissions in the grid by 2040. With commitments by California and Washington, it foresees a 100% clean West Coast by 2045.
Well, he has signed it, so it's now a law.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
And there's a little note here. A broader economy-wide carbon cap was killed. Republican legislators, despite widespread support. Killed by Republican.
Yeah.
And if you want to, this is worth looking at if you got the time. Look at the link, because the bill's key elements are worth looking at.
Right.
And there's a little note on Mount Jefferson. It's a volcano in the Cascades. At 10,500 feet, it's the second tallest mountain in Oregon.
Yeah, and it's
up there all by itself.
Yes, it is. It's an interesting picture. The mist in the valleys gathering together. Okay, should we move on, Tom?
Can't dance.
Okie doke. Our next item is from CNN, and we're talking in the middle of a thunderstorm here, which isn't too bad, and it doesn't seem to have ground strikes. But the weather coming up looks like it's going to be really fierce in the next couple of days.
It's going to be like this for the next couple of days.
I think it's going to be worse, which is why I want to go ahead with the show. So our next item is from CNN, and we have a picture of flaring gas.
It's interesting. It's interesting that they continue doing this because they could be selling that.
Yeah, but in a lot of cases, the amount of money that they'd get by selling it is small compared to the cost of gathering it and cleaning it and all that.
I hear what you're saying, but when I first flew into Saudi Arabia many, many moons ago, I could see flaring gas all over the place.
Yeah.
A year later, I flew back into the kingdom, and the flaring gas was gone.
Yeah.
So if the Saudis can capture it, anybody can capture it.
I think that's probably true. But, in the United States, we have a tradition of wasting things. What do you got for a title?
Well, I was just about to suggest that I read that. Biden signs bill repealing Trump-era EPA rule on methane emissions.
Right. President Joe Biden signed a bill repealing a Trump-era rule that rolled back regulations on emissions of methane from oil and gas industries. Methane is a particularly strong greenhouse gas that is allowed to escape from gas and oil wells and from pipelines. And I've mentioned this before. There are methane leaks in the pipelines all over the place.
All over the place, anyhow.
Yeah, there was a group of students who went through Boston. They navigated all the streets of Boston and found, I don't remember the number of leaks, but it was over 2,000 of them. And one of the environmental organizations wanted to do a double check on that. And so they ran their own survey, which is done by using methane methane sensors that are mounted on cars. And they just drive up and down the streets finding methane leaks. And they found over 3,000 of them. And that was just in Boston. And
methane is not cool at all.
No.
It traps up to 80 times more heat than carbon dioxide. It just doesn't last as long.
It absorbs a lot of heat compared to carbon dioxide, but it is destroyed eventually in the atmosphere, and destroying it takes a very long time. This is not something that happens overnight.
Well, what's going on here is Trump, and he said this publicly. This wasn't any secret. But he just tried to roll back as much of Obama's regulations as he could.
Yeah, and there were people.
Biden's trying to put some of them back.
Yes, and there were people who were speculating that the reason why Donald Trump was rolling back anything that Obama had done was for revenge. It had nothing to do with the American economy. There are people who have speculated that, but one way or the other.
Done what?
What's that?
What revenge for what?
Oh, things that Obama said about him.
Oh, okay.
I mean, what can I say?
Can you imagine actually Obama ran against him? I mean, how could you do such a thing?
Yeah, well, I don't know. How can you do such a thing? Okay.
Wrong here. We got an interesting map.
I have to apologize for the fact that this is a bit fuzzy looking. I could only find it in a fuzzy looking form. I did look to see if I could find something better, but this shows you basically where it shows you grids.
I was just going to say those orange things you see there, each of them is a grid, and there's other grids on there that aren't orange, but they're still grids.
Right, and the ones that are orange have an elevated risk of an emergency risk, and the one that is high risk is California. This is the risk of something going really wrong and the power going out and so forth. And what
the article says is, and this is just what you're saying, it's potential electricity disruptions in the United States this summer.
Yep, this is from Clean Technica.
Parts of the New England.
Yes. Parts of the United States are at elevated or high risk for electricity emergencies this summer. An assessment by the North American Electricity Reliability Corporation says.
NERC.
Yep. It notes that above normal temperatures are expected in much of North America, increasing the electricity demand. So that explains why the WECC Northwest and Rocky Mountains and WECC Southwest and ERCOT and California grids are all marked as elevated risk.
Well, NERC itself is a nonprofit international regulatory organization that oversees regional electrical grids.
Yeah.
So basically, that's what that map is.
Yes.
Several regions are at risk of electricity shortfalls this summer, and heat wave caused rolling blackouts.
Yes.
So they talked about ISO New England, which is our grid.
Yep.
It has sufficient resources to meet peak demand unless above normal levels of electricity demand occurs.
Yes.
So we're kind of on edge city right there.
Right.
We may be okay, but if it gets too hot for too long, we're in trouble too.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to move on. We're up to Friday, July 2nd, and we have
an interesting picture there.
This is for the International Energy Administration meeting. I had no idea that there were so many people involved in this.
Can you imagine how much it costs to set up that room?
I don't know. I wouldn't want to pay it. Anyway.
A report from the International Energy Agency.
Yeah, this is from Yale Climate Connections. Climate and policy experts are singing praise of a study released by the International Energy Administration. One says, quote, quite amazing, end quote. Another says heartening. That is also a quote. And a third one says it is, quote, one of the most important climate analyses ever published, end quote. And basically they're saying we can do it. That's what they're saying.
That's basically what it says. I read some stuff on this thing, and McKibben is in the middle of this.
Is he?
Yeah, Bill McKibben. Yeah, he's been commenting on it.
He's always commenting on the climate.
Well, most of the time I agree with what he's saying. So.
Yeah. Okay. Our next item is from BBC, This is a picture that I had said last week I didn't want to put up because it says right in that sun thing that's on the poster, Canada's hotspot, and I just felt bad about showing a picture of Lytton, British Columbia, that has a sign saying Canada's hotspot, but it was.
Well, you have to worry anymore. It's not there.
Basically it's not there anymore. And by the way, we are going to have an item on this next week. It came out today, and it shows a picture of what Lytton looked like after the fire. There are a few buildings standing, but 90% of the buildings have been burned down.
Well, what the article says is Lytton, heat wave recent village, Lytton, which is a heat wave record village in Canada, was overwhelmingly burned in a wildfire.
Yeah, the wildfire burned 90% of the village that recorded Canada's highest temperatures ever the day before, according to its MP. MP in this case means Member of Parliament. Brad Viss, what?
I'm going to read this, which came right off the BBC.
Okay.
Lytton, which is a home to about 250 people, is located about 160 miles north and east of Vancouver.
Yes.
The mayor, quoted, this is a quote now, said, within about 15 minutes, the whole town was engulfed in flame.
Yeah, they didn't have any time to leave, except to prepare for leaving. All they had time to do was hop in their cars and drive.
Well, this is what he says. People basically just grabbed their pets, grabbed their keys, got in their car, and fled.
Yeah, and there's not much left. And this is really very destructive to people's lives. And this is a town that had almost set records before. It had the second highest temperature ever recorded in Canada. But when it set a record on Sunday, it was something like 8 degrees warmer than the second place record in the history of Canada.
And that's 121 degrees.
Yeah, and this is just unbelievable. This is a place that has, it's a hot little village because of the way that it's sited, but British Columbia is more like Vermont, and 121 degrees in Vermont is just unbelievable.
It's never been anywhere near that.
Yeah, and they set the record. Then the next day they slightly topped that record. The next day they slightly topped that record, and then they burned down. So there's one of the tragedies of life. Should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, we got a nice picture of some California mountains.
We do indeed.
And also we got some bad news.
We have some bad news, and this is from CNN.
Water is disappearing in the West, and not just during the summer.
Yeah, one of the West's largest and best water reservoirs is mountain snow. Mountain snowfalls normally stay frozen until late spring, and when the snow melts, the water runs into rivers and fills reservoirs just in time for the summer heat. But now we're in a snow drought. There's no snow in the mountains to fill those reservoirs. You can see in this picture there's a little snow, and I don't know what year that picture was taken, but you've got to have a lot of snow to fill the reservoirs, and that snow is just not falling. And what that means is that until they get rain, this drought is just going to get continually worse. And the thing that I'm afraid of is that when they get the rain, it's going to be an atmospheric river, and they're going to have severe flooding.
Well, the snow appeared early this year, and it quit early this year.
Yeah.
There's nothing left.
Yes, and the reservoirs are almost empty. In terms of their ability to generate electricity, they're almost empty. Let me put it that way.
Well, just to make matters worse, the wildfire season is starting.
Yeah, that's right.
So far this year, there have been more than 3,500 fires.
Tom, I'm extremely upset about what's going on in the West. I looked at the drought map today. Less than 1% of the entire U.S. West is at a level of dryness. Let me put it that way. That is normal. And
everywhere out there.
Yeah, and it's like over 50% of the West is in extreme drought, and a third of it is in a stage of drought that is worse than extreme. This is just it's hard. There's no rain on the horizon. There's no forecast of rain coming in to stop this, and so it's hard to imagine that this is anything but reflective of a new normal. This is not a drought that has happened like has happened in history before.
And the effect of this on economies is significant.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, our next item basically says more about it. Should we go to that?
We got a picture of some grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers, and this is from CNN.
You know the difference between grasshoppers and locusts?
I know there's a difference. Grasshoppers have got legs that are for hopping.
If there's 12 or less, they're grasshoppers. If they're 13 or more, they're locusts.
Okay. All right.
Cattle are competing against grasshoppers for food in the West historic drought, and the bugs are winning.
Yeah, against the backdrop of unprecedented heat waves and deadly wildfires, the West's historic drought has ranchers fighting another problem besides water shortages. A prolific horde of grasshoppers is competing with cattle for food. This kind of thing has happened in the past, and when it does, the ranchers really don't have any choice but to round up their cattle and send them to market. And it may be that the price of beef will go down temporarily for a month or two, but this is not good, and it's happening all over the West.
Well, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is aerially spraying 2.6 million acres in Montana.
Yeah.
That's half the size of Vermont with insecticides in an attempt to kill these grasshopper populations before they're out of hand.
You know, sympathize with the fact that they're trying to make things better, but I'm not sure that spraying an area that big with insecticide is really all that good an idea.
Well, one of the things they say is insecticides can actually worsen grasshopper outbreaks by harming the grasshopper's competitors.
Yes. Yes. So, okay. I'm going to go.
Move on here. We got
let's do that.
Contented cow.
We have a contented cow, and this is especially dear to me. When I was 15 years old, I climbed to the Kitzbühel where that cow is.
You climbed?
I climbed the Kitzbühel.
Did you really?
Yeah. Now, we obviously where that cow is, it's a walk up. The cow just walked to where it is, and in fact, the whole mountain is a walk up. You don't need mountain climbing gear to go up that mountain. But I will tell you that as a person who is afraid of heights, as I am, and in those days was worse, walking on a ledge that's 2.5 feet wide with a 380-foot vertical drop is not something that I enjoyed. But I did do it.
Well, Kitzbühel is a noted ski resort in Austria.
Absolutely. I've known a number of people who have skied there. So
well,
what do you...
It says here, cow stomachs can break down hard-to-recycle plastic. Now, this is worth pursuing.
Yes, it is. This is from CNN. Scientists at the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Vienna, the Austrian Center for Industrial Biotechnology, and the University of Innsbruck, which, by the way, I've been in Innsbruck too, and that is an amazing city, found that some common plastics could be broken down when exposed to the gastric juices found in the stomach of a cow. And
well, I don't think they're really expecting the cows to make plastic out of this, but
no,
they are looking at the chemistry, and it looks promising.
Yeah, it does. This is a combination of microbes that live in the cow's stomach, and many people know, the cows have a very complicated stomach that involves, they eat and then they regurgitate their food in a form that is called a cud, and they chew their cud and then swallow it again, and it goes through the system of stomachs. Well, the first stomach is a place where the grass or whatever that they have eaten is attacked by microbes that live there, and also by enzymes, and they break down the cell walls of the plants that they've been eating, which does produce methane and makes the cows burp a lot. But now what they're finding is that the same system will digest plastics to some extent.
Well, that's an interesting development.
Yeah, it is.
You can certainly believe they're working hard at it, because it can
yes.
solve a lot of problems.
And by the way, the plastics that they're looking at are different types of polyethylene. So these are the common plastics that are used for wrapping things in food and so forth in supermarkets.
Well, as it says, plastic bags, bottles, textiles, and food packaging.
Yeah, exactly. So should we go on from that?
Yeah, I'm already looking at the next picture there.
It's a very strange picture.
Liar, liar, the ocean's on fire.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica, and that yellowish blob just to the right of the middle of the screen is a fire on the Gulf of Mexico, just on the surface.
Looks like a drilling rig there.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
A couple of firefighting boats are attempting to fight the fire, and
I think what they're
for them, they're a little bit too far away.
Well, I think what they're trying to do, Tom, is to prevent the fire from getting to the drilling rig.
Yep.
Yeah, they just want to kind of keep it away from the drilling rig, and I have no idea how long they could keep that up, or how long they would have to keep it up, because that fire is going to go on until the pipeline that is leaking is going to stop. And that's
from the article, it said it took over 5 hours to fully extinguish.
Okay. All right. I'm glad they got it out. Yes, I had forgotten that. This is from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title?
fire explodes in the Gulf of Mexico from a gas pipeline rupture.
The Gulf of Mexico is on fire because of a ruptured pipeline. Brian Kahn, the managing editor at Earther, tweeted this. He shared a video that looked like it was CGI, but it wasn't. Reuters reported that it was started from a gas leak in an underwater pipeline west of the Yucatan Peninsula. And, here again, we're talking about gas leaks. This is what we started with this show, gas leaks, and they're dangerous. And one of the things that they do is cause fires that can be dangerous.
Well, for the article, it says there's no telling how long it was leaking before the gas caught on fire.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. We have major leaks leading to explosions, fires, what have you, in the United States every few months, every couple of months. And
interesting takeaway from the article, I'll quote him.
Yeah.
Sometimes I seriously think the fossil fuel industry is secretly trying to kill us all.
They don't want to kill everybody. They need to make money. And in order to have that money made, they have to have customers. They want to keep at least some of us alive.
Only the rich ones.
Only the rich ones. Yeah, nobody cares who grows the food.
Nice picture here of a Carolina wren.
Yeah, we're up to Sunday, July 4th, and there is a Carolina wren, and that wren is singing happily. And why?
He looks like he's putting his heart into it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And why is he singing there, Tom?
Why is he singing?
Yeah, tell us the title of the article.
Spending to help protect Florida wildlife routes. Some on the first coast gets DeSantis okay.
Yeah, this is Governor DeSantis, who's not exactly an environmentalist. And here, this little guy heard about it, of course, and he's just happy as you can be. This is from the Florida Times-Union. Work to protect remnants of undeveloped old Florida got a big dollar boost this week when Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation steering $400 million into land conservation. Most of its focus is on protecting wildlife migration routes. So
I was confused by this article because they used a couple of things that I'm not familiar with.
Oh,
the first coast. I never heard that expression before.
I think the first coast is the.
I'm going to tell you what it is.
Oh, okay.
It's the northeastern corner of Florida that was the first area colonized by Europeans.
Okay.
And the other item that they talked about was Old Florida, which is a handful of cities found throughout the state that predate the big ticket attractions.
Okay. All right.
So the spending was part of the Florida Wildlife Charter Act, which was passed to encourage protection of stretches of undeveloped land where animals can still travel despite coming development.
Yeah. Okay. I just had a note flash up on the screen here that said that the internet connection is unstable. So we may have to come back and revisit.
We can still record it and play it back, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll I mean, with an unstable I'm recording this onto my computer, and we don't need an internet.
And Brian's recording it too.
Brian is recording it too, and if I can
hear you, they'll play it back when they feel like playing it back.
That's right. So we'll just go ahead. Okay, we have an item from Ars Technica, and that is a picture of cities in Texas. Do you recognize what any of these cities are?
Not really.
I think the one that is all the way to the right and about 3/4 of the way down is Galveston.
Probably is, which means the big one in the bottom is Houston.
That's right. And Austin is one of them. I think Austin is in the left.
I think you're correct.
Yeah. And I forget, I think the one to the right of that is Waco, which I always like to call Wacko. And had a Canadian friend, and I told her that, she said, how do you pronounce that? I said, Wacko. She said, no. I said, yes, really, it's wacko. Anyway, we have...
It's a $26 billion plan to save the Houston area from rising seas.
Yes. In 2014, the Army Corps of Engineers partnered with the state of Texas to study Ike Dike-like, there you go, alternatives for Galveston Bay. With support from the state legislature, the Corps is getting ready to deliver their recommendations to the U.S. Congress for funding in September. Now, I want to point out, Houston is not exactly on the ocean. It's actually set a bit inland. And
it's on its own bay, and the bay is very shallow.
Yeah.
And it's just like a corridor that you have to go take to get in and out of it.
Yeah, and they're a little above sea level, but they may have to put up dikes. In fact, they're looking at dikes in...
That's what this article's about. Let me read what it says.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Ike Dike, which is named after Hurricane Ike, is a proposal for a coastal barrier intended to protect Houston's Galveston Bay.
Yeah.
Now, this thing is huge. It will combine huge gates across the main inlet with many miles of high seawalls.
Yep.
As a storm approaches, the two main gates would swing shut to close the channel.
This is like what they have at London. It's similar concept anyway. And
Denmark's got something going like this too.
Who does?
Denmark.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But they're looking at the dikes in Holland to see what technology is used there, because a lot of Holland is.
Well, didn't they invent the dike?
I don't know if they invented it, but they've had them since the Middle Ages, and
they got them all over the place.
Yeah, and a large part of Holland is below sea level.
It would be uninhabitable if it wasn't for the dikes.
That's exactly correct. And they have a densely populated country. Land is extremely valuable, so they've been creating land by building dikes. Okay.
Well, we got a guy here, and he's collecting overtime while we're talking. So
he's what?
Collecting overtime while we're talking.
Oh, is that the guy who's the solar installer?
That's a solar installer.
This is the next picture we're talking about. This is an article that came from MEP Middle East.
Renewable energy to spur post-COVID recovery and create 43 million jobs by 2050, according to IRENA.
Okay, 43 million jobs? Really? I mean, that's a lot of jobs. The latest analysis report that was released by the International Renewable Energy Agency showcases
that's
IRENA, showcases that the agency's 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway foresees the creation of up to 1.22 million energy-related jobs in 2050, more than double today's 58 million. Now, when they're talking about energy-relating jobs, they're talking about a lot of jobs this guy that we're seeing here is a solar installer. He's putting in monocrystalline solar panels, which is why they look a little unusual compared to other solar panels. They're just solid color. But also, anybody who's doing anything that mitigates or prepares for or whatever climate change is a person who has got an energy-related job. So a person who installs insulation in buildings has got an energy-related job. A person who is installing infrastructure for highways or railroads could have an energy-related job if it has to do with climate change or energy. So a lot of this is not just people who are installing solar panels or working on wind turbines.
Well, they're investing a lot of money, but the article says that the benefits greatly exceed the cost of investment.
Well, we've known that for a long time. But the idea of having that number of people employed worldwide, this is the biggest business opportunity that has ever presented itself to human beings. And we've got people who want us not to take it because their particular organizations would not profit from it. So
kind of selfish.
What's that?
Kind of selfish.
I think that's a little selfish. Yeah. Should we go on?
I think so. We got a couple of people there that are relaxing as their car takes them somewhere.
that's what's going on. This is autonomous driving. The car knows where to go, and the car knows how to get there, and the car knows more than you do. And so basically,
I agree with all of that stuff, but I can't get used to this idea.
I can't get used to it either. Every time I think about this, I think, is that really what we want to do? But let's just pretend for a moment that it is. This is from Clean Technica, and I don't know if I mentioned it. We are up to Monday, July 5th.
All day.
All day. What do you have for a title?
France is preparing for the arrival of autonomous driving.
The French do these things, They decide that they're going to be way ahead of everybody else every once in a while, and that's exactly what they do. Europe is having a first as France makes preparations for the arrival of autonomous vehicles on its roads. For Europe, this will be the first for its road code and the code of transport. France is leading the way toward establishing regulatory framework for the inevitable, which is autonomous driving. And I got to tell you,
the key word there is inevitable. It is coming.
Autonomous driving, it means that the driving is going to be safer. And I think that this has already been demonstrated.
Well, this is what's going on in France. The systems are going to be on automated roads on predefined routes starting September of 2022.
Yeah.
The driver of the automated vehicle will be released from criminal liability, so he can sit there and read. There may be some cases where the system will have to perform emergency maneuvers automatically.
Yeah.
Is that you or me?
It was probably me.
Okay, I forgive you.
I was just moving my microphone without thinking about it. Go ahead.
Well, there will be cases where the system will have to perform emergency maneuvers automatically.
Yeah, and actually that kind of thing, we're getting into that type of world. And despite the fact that every once in a while there's some kind of accident that involves automatic driving or partially automatic driving, the accident record for driving in this mode is pretty good. Yeah, much better than human beings.
Absolutely. I mean, it seems weird, but the word inevitable is inevitable.
It is indeed. Okay, I want to go on to the next one. Is that all right?
Yeah, what are those funny-looking things?
I don't know, Tom. They're very perplexing, aren't they?
Aren't they?
This is from Renew Economy.
Green Dreams, managing the transition from rust to renewables.
Rust to renewables. 5 years after the closure of South Australia's last coal-fired generators, the Port Augusta region finds itself in the middle of a renewable energy boom. South Australia has a world-leading share of wind and solar, and that share is to jump even higher as fossil fuel assets decline. And South Australia is not a hippy-dippy place. This is a place where the government is very much to the right of center. So...
Well, South Australia is the name of a state, just to get things straight.
Yeah, and it is
in the South. It's right in the middle of the South. It's
that's right.
Sort of like our Texas.
Kind of like, except that it's, as Australian states go, it's not all that big.
Well, they're all pretty big.
all except Tasmania, which is, by our standards here in Vermont, a big state.
Absolutely.
They grow apples in Tasmania. Did you know that?
I didn't, but I could certainly believe it.
Yeah.
Well, the promise of renewable energy is a way of improving local health, and that was instrumental in generating community support for the projects. Yeah. It's a long but an interesting article. And this Port Augusta region has some big ambitions.
Yes, and it's an interesting thing. Wind turbines. People have complained about the effects on human health of wind turbines.
Doesn't seem to be any.
Well, there is an effect, and the effect has been that people's health near wind turbines, in some cases, has improved because the coal generators have shut down. And
That's
is
interesting.
yeah, and this is something that, here we are. In South Australia, the government is made up of people who really opposed wind turbines and solar power until they saw the price of the electricity.
Well, if you think wind turbines are going to make you sick, guess what? They're going to make you sick.
Well, that's one of the things that the Australian Medical Association found out. Wind turbines only make people sick if the people expect to be made sick.
Bingo.
And there it is. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, we got a hungry cow there.
Yeah, another cow. We keep having this poor guy. Looks like he's got part of a horn missing.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
But he's got other problems, one of which is that he doesn't have a lot to eat.
Well, 60 years of climate change warnings, the signs that were missed and ignored.
This is sad. In August 1974, the CIA produced a study on, quote, climatological research as it pertains to intelligence problems, end quote. Quote, the climate change began in 1960, end quote. The report's first page informs us, quote, but no one, including the climatologists, recognized it, end quote. So climate change, there had been people who had said, climate change is coming. But when it first started, they didn't actually see that that's what they had in front of them. On the other hand, it has been recognized for 50 years almost.
Longer than that, because
well,
there was a series of what they call little ice ages.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I remember from when I was in 5th through 7th grade. So this would have been 1956 through 58. And I remember talk in class in that time, 56 through 58, about climate change. And one of the things I remember was a teacher who had grown up in northern Minnesota who told us that when he was a kid, which would have been probably in the 1930s, maybe 1940s, he was not all that old. The old timers in the area that he lived in used to talk about how the winters were nowhere near as cold and they didn't have anywhere near as much snow. So he was talking about the climate changing. And this was, I think, about 1956. And then a couple of years later, there was a special show on television. I think that's what it was. And I remember, I didn't see the show, but one of the things they went into was the fact that all of the glaciers in Glacier National Park were in retreat.
Yeah, they were all melting.
And, that was, again, I remember the teacher saying, we don't know why that's happening. But the evidence of climate change, I think, was already there, and people were already beginning to notice it as on the basis of anecdotal evidence. And of course, when you start doing studies like they're talking about in this particular article, which was from The Guardian, anecdotal evidence doesn't count.
We're talking about a series of historical cold snaps going back as far as 1350.
Yeah.
And it brought not only drought and famine, but also brought war.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to Tuesday, July 6th, and we have a map that came from the Drought Monitor. I referenced this map and maps like it before. This is the June 29th, which was it. Today is the 8th, and this one we're looking at was from June 29th data, but it was released on the 1st of July. It has been updated this morning, but I didn't have time to put the updates in. And we have
it. Interesting that the drought in Vermont stops at the state line.
Stops at what? The state line?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it stops a little north of the state line because there's yellow there, and the yellow isn't drought. It's just abnormally dry. And, I don't think Brattleboro is going to be abnormally dry after today and tomorrow.
Well, I looked at the lawn this morning.
Yeah.
It looks like it grew about 3 inches overnight.
Well, all of a sudden, we've got lots and lots of rain. And, okay, this is from CNN. What do you have for title?
Florida is getting ready for Tropical Storm Elsa. Well, listen, man, this is old news.
Yes, it is.
Drought heat worsens in the west.
Yeah, Ilsa has already hit Florida, and I think it's exited Florida, and it's basically
it's all the way up in Virginia already.
Oh, is it? It's yeah, that's right. It's going to hit us tomorrow, and by the time it hits us, it's just going to be a big storm.
Well, we're going to have a lot of rain in the next few days.
It'll have a lot of rain, and we can use a lot of rain. But okay, Tropical Storm Ilsa is headed to Florida after dumping up to a foot of rain on Cuba. Meanwhile, the drought conditions in the West are only getting worse. Climatologists say that climate change is clearly a factor in the situation. I have to say, I can't imagine that isn't the case when you consider Lytton, British Columbia, breaking the temperature by 8 degrees. That's that's just unheard of.
Well, I've been following this storm on the map, and it's heading north.
Yeah,
and it's going to include a lot of rain.
Yep, it will. Okay, we've got to go on to the next one, unfortunately, Tom. And that
a little picture here of perovskite.
Yes. What is a perovskite? This is from Clean Technica.
Well, red hot perovskite solar cell fields just got way redder and hotter.
Yeah. Plenty of ink has been spilled on the perovskite solar cell topic of late, and for good reasons. Synthetic perovskites are relatively cheap and easy to grow. Their superior optical qualities could be behind a new generation of low-cost solar cells, and they're getting better. And the graph that's in this article shows that these cells are getting very, very efficient. The one problem with them is they degrade on exposure to the atmosphere.
They're working on that.
They sure are.
Working pretty hard at it.
They are indeed.
Well, this perovskite it's actually a transparent ceramic.
Yeah.
It's a calcium titanium oxygen combination.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody who's hearing the show and is worried about chemicals, titanium is not a chemical to worry about.
No, this isn't creating any problems with the environment.
Yeah, titanium dioxide is used as very, very commonly as a pigment, and in fact, it's also used.
It's the white pigment in paint, isn't it?
It is in a lot of paint. There are many white pigments, but titanium dioxide is one of the better ones. Titanium dioxide also exists as part of confectioner's sugar. So you can bet your bottom dollar, unless you've avoided donuts your whole life, that you've got some titanium in you.
Used to be a big titanium mine over by Lake George.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I visited it. It's a large open pit mine.
Okay. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica, and there is a picture of a forest.
Is that what that is?
I think it is. It looks.
The trees got in the way.
You know, you got a point there. Okay, what do you have for a title?
10 years of EU's failed biofuels policy has wiped out forests.
The size of the Netherlands.
That's twice the size of Vermont.
Yeah. Europe's thirst for biodiesel has, and this is not looking at biomass being burned for electricity. This is just biodiesel. Has likely wiped out forests the size of the Netherlands since introduction of the EU's green fuels law in 2010, and has greater CO2 emissions than the fossil fuel diesel that it replaces. And this is according to a transport and environment study.
Well, instead of using petroleum oil, they've gone to palm and soy diesel oil. And they're killing the palm and soy forest.
Yeah, and the forests they're killing are not in Europe. They're in places like Indonesia.
Yeah.
But
that's exactly where they are. Yep.
And the other thing is they import wood pellets to run units of the Drax what had been the coal burning power plant in the UK, the biggest coal burning power plant there. And now they're importing wood pellets, but they're clear cutting forests in Georgia to get the wood, which they promised they would not do. What?
I think we'll talk about that very shortly.
Okay.
Some of that.
All right. Our next item is we have a picture of a tanker, and we have an item from Clean Technica. What do you have, Tom?
A tanker full of fossil fuels isn't carbon neutral. That's not how it works.
Yeah. And by the way, I should mention that we are up to Wednesday, July 7th. Shell announced a special, quote, carbon neutral, end quote, shipment of fracked gas to Europe. The gas is to be burned and it will emit CO2, but Shell and its gas supplier seem to want the focus to be on the shipping in a way that is carbon neutral. And, you know,
well, the author to divert us, you know.
They're trying to, it's like the old magic trick. You have people's attention on this and you do that.
Absolutely.
You know, you want to manipulate the cards and draw the card that you want, and you have a pretty girl, scantily clad, standing next to you. So the guys in the audience don't look at what you're up to; they look at her, and it's a standard trick.
Well, for the article, it says it all. How exactly does a massive shipment of crude oil or fossil gas shipped across the Atlantic manage to get a carbon neutral label?
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
That's not how carbon neutrality works.
No, it's not. Okay, we are up to an article from the BBC. I'm going to put the picture up. That is a geothermal heating system. That is
the article.
Yeah, this is from BBC. What do you got for a title?
How flooded coal mines could heat homes.
This is really interesting. A quarter of the houses in the UK sit above abandoned coal mines, and the coal mines have been flooded naturally with water. Now the mines are being put into a new zero carbon use. A heat pump can easily extract heat from the water, which comes up from the mines at 15 degrees Celsius, which is 59 degrees Fahrenheit, and deliver it to buildings that need it. And, you know, this is just, it makes things so easy. I should mention here that we've talked many times about heat pumps and the fact that they're very, very efficient. There's what's called an air source heat pump that takes the heat out of the atmosphere, even if it's 0 degrees out. Some of these heat pumps can extract heat from that 0 degree temperature and put it into the house to heat the house up to,
Think of a refrigerator.
Yeah.
It's a heat pump is just a varied form of a refrigerator.
That's right.
Using the heat, not the cold.
That's right. And if your freezer is at 0 degrees, the refrigerator is extracting heat from that. And that's what drives the heat down.
Well, that blows my mind, you know?
Yeah.
It's cold and they're taking heat out of it.
Yeah. A ground source heat pump, you can have a company come in and drill wells on your property, and they go down and they extract the heat from what's underground instead of what's in the atmosphere, and it's far, far, far more efficient. In this case,
we're doing that stuff here because we got them all over, like Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
they stopped mining the coal there because they've taken it all.
Yeah,
the mines are still there. They're probably just exactly like this, all full of water.
They probably are. The only thing is, if your house happens to be above a mine, you're probably not going to be able to drill into the mine to get the water to heat your house. And the reason for that is because the mines are too far underground. It would cost too much to get down to the mines.
Oh, are they?
But what they can do is use the mine shafts. All of the mine shafts are available to have pipes go down, and that means that they would have a centralized heating system for a number of buildings. Like what we're seeing is probably a centralized heating system for a number of buildings, which could be buildings in a neighborhood.
Well, as the article says, it's an underused clean energy source.
Yeah.
And it also says that heating needs account for around 70% of total energy usage.
Yep. Okay, we're up to our last article, Tom.
Look at that, huh?
That is very weird, isn't it? This is from...
Yeah, that's all plastic.
Yeah, it is. This is from Clean Technica. What do you have for a title?
Made of Air, and that's in quotes, that's a company, is producing carbon negative thermoplastic from farm waste. Carbon negative.
Carbon negative.
Wow.
Yeah, Made of Air, a startup based in Berlin, created a carbon negative thermoplastic. Thermoplastic means that you can cast it, you can bend it, you can weld it. A lot of most thermoplastics I know of, polyethylene and polypropylene, I've welded both of those. It's kind of fun actually to weld them, and you just weld them with hot air, and you have a welding rod that's kind of like the welding rod that you would use if you were doing oxyacetylene welding or something like that. But in this case, it's the same kind of plastic that you're welding. They make this carbon negative thermoplastic using waste from forests and farms in the area around Berlin. They claim that the waste, that the plastic material is 90% carbon, and it sequesters 2 tons of carbon dioxide for every ton of plastic made. And if that,
they call this stuff biochar.
Yes.
Basically, it's charcoal.
Yeah, well, biochar is a special product that's being used fairly widely around the world for maintaining or producing fertility in farmlands. Biochar is basically
it's a fertilizer.
It can be used as a fertilizer. It is a porous form of charcoal, and if you mix it in with the soil, all kinds of little microbes get into the pores, and the pores also absorb water, and so soil that has this biochar in it absorbs water and holds it better than other soils. And the thing that
have taken is biochar.
What?
This company has taken this biochar.
Right.
They mix it with a binding material which is created from sugarcane, and they make thermoplastic granules that can be used in normal plastic molding.
Yeah, and what they're selling is not what we're seeing here is siding in an Audi dealership in Germany. They're not planning, I don't think, on selling a plastic product.
No, they sell the granules.
They're going to sell the plastic granules so that other people can cast them.
Other people are buying plastic granules right now as we speak.
Yep, and they're going to cast them into whatever product they're going to cast them into. So this is an interesting development.
This is technology. This is going to go somewhere.
I think it probably is. If anybody's wondering how you can sequester 2 tons of carbon dioxide to make 1 ton of plastic, consider this. The plastic is 90% carbon, but the carbon dioxide has got 3 atoms. 2 of them are carbon with an atomic weight of 16 each. So that's got a combined atomic weight of 32. The third one is going to be carbon, which is probably going to have an atomic weight of 12. So your combined weight of molecular weight is going to be about 44, of which only 12, less than a third, is carbon. So when you take carbon dioxide and you take the carbon out, you'll release the oxygen into the atmosphere, and the amount of carbon that you get out of carbon dioxide is a small amount compared to the amount of carbon dioxide you take it from. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, I think it'll probably make sense to somebody
Well,
out
if
there.
you look at that picture again, that's all plastic made of
Straw. It's made of straw or forest waste, which was produced because of drawing down carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Well, anyway, we are at our last article, and we have one last slide, which says, "Have a perfectly lovely week." I usually put up something a little bit more imaginative than that, but today I was lacking imagination, I suppose. So thank you, Tom. To everybody, we are what?
It's been fun.
Yeah, we are waving goodbye even as I speak. Next week we will be doing this from home again, but I understand that the week after we may be in the studio again, and you can see our, at least my rather unattractive face.